If you think bullying stops after high school, you are so wrong. It just gets better at hiding. And in workplaces across the country, maybe even yours, people are being harassed, isolated, sabotaged, humiliated, and intimidated every single day. Now, here's the scary part about that. Most adults don't even recognize it as bullying until the damage has already been done. Today, we're ripping the mask off workplace bullying, what it is, what it looks like, and what you must do if you see it or experience it. Because, yesterday's episode, we talked about culture. This isn't just a culture issue. Bullying is a performance issue. It's a legal issue. It's an ethical issue, and it's a leadership issue. So let's get into it. So first, let's just identify what is workplace bullying. Workplace bullying is repeated, targeted behavior with the intent to intimidate, undermine, harm an employee. This could be emotionally, psychologically, professionally, spiritually, mentally, all of those. I also want to be clear, bullying is not a one-time disagreement. It's not constructive feedback. It's not accountability. It's none of those. Bullying is a pattern that damages people and destroys cultures. And a lot of times is an indicator of the culture itself. Let's look at some examples just to get an idea of it. When constant criticism that's not tied to performance, so just being, criticized on personality or character, anything that's tied to performance, that is an example of bullying. Another example, which is obvious, but maybe we don't think about it in the professional space, yelling at someone, belittling someone, name-calling someone, that's bullying. Public humiliation is also a form of bullying. Sabotaging someone's work or even stealing someone's work, those are examples of bullying as well. Another example would be something like withholding information or resources that could help somebody. That's also bullying. But one of the most common ones is rumors, spreading gossip, talking about somebody, even spreading false rumors, spreading misinformation about somebody. That's all forms of bullying. Excluding somebody or isolating somebody is also bullying. And then micromanagement as punishment is also a form of bullying. And just overall, threatening someone's job is bullying. And yes, you know what else is also bullying? Retaliation. Retaliation for speaking up, that's bullying as well. So let's look at some real examples, right? So we have like the invisible wall, example one. This is where a team happens to forget to invite someone to meetings or hides information, sets them up to fail. I actually have a friend who we were on a trip together, me, him, and his partner, with my closest friends, and we were just hanging out. We went to a party together, and my friend got really stressed, and he got in his head, and he had to leave the party. And later, the next day, we talked about what happened. Well, he had just told me that he had just found out that the person that he had been reporting to was doing these things to him. He was not adding my friend to the meetings that he needed to be on. He hid information from him that he needed to be successful. And so, but my friend found out about this later when the leader no longer was his leader and his new leader told him. So that was an example of bullying. And when he told me that, I was like, oh my God, that's wild that somebody would do that. But that's an example of that. And there's also something else that he did too that we'll talk about. But here's another example. I've seen this one happen way too much. Public execution. I know it sounds harsh, but it is harsh. It's when a supervisor or manager uses the meeting to humiliate a person on purpose, to maybe set an example or make an example out of the person. But the meeting is used to call out somebody or to humiliate them. Sometimes it's done under the guise of, motivating the person to do more, but it's bullying. It is obnoxious bullying. Example 3, sabotaging somebody but disguising it as coaching. So giving somebody like vague, shifting expectations that they can never meet. The most common example is do better. You got to do better. Be better. Okay, that's not really help. It's very vague. I need you to get better. I need you to get better at your role. What does that mean? Because it's so vague, it's impossible to meet, and then the person gets punished for it. So that's another example. Example 4 is social exile. Rumors, isolating people. It creates an us versus them mentality on culture, on the team, in the organization. People feel like they don't belong or people don't like them. So these are all examples of when we socially exile others. And example 5 is retaliation. And when an employee reports bullying and all of a sudden they're written up or they're being micromanaged, they're being pushed out, they're losing work, that's also workplace bullying. And the sad reality is there are some companies where the HR people, HR we think is supposed to protect the humans, right? Human resources, but they're there to protect the organization, which when you use it right can work in your benefit. But usually when someone speaks up, people are often afraid to speak out against bullying because they fear getting written up or some kind of retaliation. But that's also bullying. When you retaliate, that's bullying. But let's talk about that because bullying impacts us. It doesn't just hurt our feelings. It can destroy our potential. It can destroy a person's potential. So let's look at it from a couple ways. The individual, it often creates anxiety and burnout because now we're using our mental, our thinking patterns, our brain, our mental energy, just thinking about the bullying. So we feel anxious, we start to burn out. That quickly makes us lose our confidence in ourselves, our abilities. And so that leads to poor performance because now we feel bullied, can't speak up. And so we don't show up the same way we used to. But it can also lead to chronic stress, which leads to physical symptoms like you're more likely to get sick when you are burning out or when you feel anxious. Your body will hold the stress and you will start to lose sleep. You may lose weight. You may gain weight. You may start to feel stress all the time, high blood pressure, which then leads to sometimes quiet disengagement or sometimes active disengagement and often resigning from the organization. But it's really from the bullying. But it's not just the individual that feels this. Organizations also feel the impact of workplace bullying, especially when it's allowed. The first and foremost thing, we talked about bullying, we talked about culture in the last episode, but bullying creates a toxic and hostile culture in the organization, especially if we allow it, which then leads to high turnover. When you have high turnover, you lose talent, you lose skill. People leave the organization, they take their skills and their assets with them, and the organization actually has to pay the cost to turn them over, to hire new people, to get them trained. The financial cost is a lot, but the moral and the ethical cost is even higher. When you have bullying that's allowed and it's occurring, people are not going to do anything. There's no psychological safety. No one's going to want to innovate. No one's going to want to come up with new ideas or help the organization grow. No, you will see innovation dwindle and people will just survive, which leads to a collapse in productivity. People are not going to meet their goals. You will start to just see a domino effect of productivity just collapsing and collapsing. And that financially impacts the organization in a very negative way. But also, and this is good, I can't tell you how paramount this is, workplace bullying contributes to the loss of trust in leadership. If leaders get away with bullying or they allow bullying or the company allows bullying, leadership will be the first to lose trust from every single employee. But also, there's a huge legal liability in organizations. I mean, from harassment to discrimination laws, this only bodes bad and negative for an organization that allows workplace bullying. This is actually the perfect moment to introduce a solution. Look, if your workplace is dealing with bullying, low morale, or a toxic culture, you don't have to deal with it or fix it alone. That's exactly why DevCore Consulting exists. At DevCore, we help organizations. We help organizations build healthier cultures. We help train leaders to lead, not to intimidate, not to bully. We create systems of accountability within the organization. We strengthen communication and trust in the organization and on leadership teams. We can help repair broken teams who have dealt with bullying and broken trust and poor communication. And we can develop managers and leaders who support, not sabotage, performance. If you want a workplace where people feel safe, respected, and supported, please visit devcoreconsulting.com. I also offer a workplace bullying course that you can take as a self-paced learning on my website, or I can facilitate it for your team, for your organization, for your leadership team. But if you want to break the cycle of bullying, I can help give you the knowledge that you need and turn that knowledge into power. So whether you're dealing with bullying already or you want to prevent it before it even starts, DevCore can help you build a culture that doesn't just grow people, it protects them. Okay, let's talk about what do you do if you're being bullied? So I have a couple of very clear, take some notes on this. Here's what you need to do. First and foremost, I cannot emphasize this enough as somebody who has trained leaders, trained HR. I can never emphasize this enough. Number one, document everything. Dates, times, witnesses, emails, everything. Create a folder somewhere and save all that information. Make notes somewhere that you can access it no matter what. So document, document, document. You'll need this, I promise you. 2, set boundaries. If you're being bullied, let's say, your leader is being obnoxious and trying to publicly humiliate you by giving you feedback in front of the entire team. Set boundaries professionally. Example, you could say something like, leader, hey, I appreciate the feedback. I need feedback delivered respectfully and privately, please. I am requesting that you give me feedback in a private manner. Use I statements. Okay, I. Because if you say you, people start to get combative. I need feedback delivered this way. I'm requesting you give it to me privately. So I need and I request. Number 3, use your internal resources. Human resources, HR, your manager's manager, your employee relations. Look internally and you should have a representative in HR. Now, I know HR gets a bad rap, and rightfully so. Some human resources' number one goal is to protect the organization. So that's why that documentation part is really important, because if you can show, if you are being bullied and you have the documentation to show that you are in fact being bullied, then HR has to do something, because that whoever's bullying you is now the liability, not you. So make sure that you document everything when you go to HR or you talk to your manager's manager or employee relations. So there are internal resources that are designated to help you, and the documentation will help you. That also means documenting when you talk to the leader, when you made a request, when you gave the feedback, hey, I need this, I'm requesting this. All of that should be documented. Number 4, know your rights. Harassment, discrimination, and retaliation are all illegal. They cannot happen. And if you report to something to human resources in good faith, they actually have to protect you against those things. So that's why you have to have that documentation. But understand that you cannot be discriminated against. You cannot get in trouble. You should be protected for reporting the bullying, because also other people might also be getting bullied as well. And so HR cannot get you in trouble for saying something. But I know sometimes that can be tough. So you can also, number 5, seek external support if you need it. You can reach out to a coach. I do personal coaching. You can reach out to me directly and I can help you navigate the situation. We can talk through the situation and come up with next steps. So you can always reach out to me, Valdet at devcoreconsulting.com. If you have a therapist that you talk to your therapist about this. They can also give you some insight. And if you have an attorney, or especially if you have an employee assistance program, an EAP, you may have access to an attorney for free or for low cost, or at least for a consultation. Talk to an attorney as well. So coach, therapist, attorney, somebody externally from the organization to help you navigate what your options are and what your next steps could and should be. What if you see bullying happening? Well, let's also talk about that too. First and foremost, we learned about this in school. Remember, people used to say stand up to bullies. Well, in the professional space, silence fuels bullies. But when we speak up and we say something, it silences the bullies. It actually gets them to stop. So here's a couple things to try. If you see somebody getting bullied, interrupt the behavior. You can say something, hey, let's pause. Let's take this offline. Let's talk about this in a little bit. You can also address the person, and it depends on your level of comfort. Hey, I don't feel comfortable with what I just saw, or I don't feel comfortable with what I just heard. So you address the behavior. You don't say you're bullying somebody. I don't feel comfortable with what I just saw. This helps remove the person out of it because then they'll make it personal. 2, support the person that was targeted privately. You can say something like, hey, Valdette, I saw that. It wasn't appropriate. If you need a witness, I'm here for you. That's really important because it lets that person know like somebody else saw it, and this can help when they make a case. But you got to let that person know like you're willing to step up for them, especially if you actually saw it or heard it. Number 3, you also must report what you've observed. HR to your leader or leader's leader, whoever is above the person doing the bullying, your voice carries weight. And for the person that's being bullied, you help them with this situation that's really hard. So use your voice to speak up when you see bullying happening. You will also be protected by HR. And make sure that is communicated, right? You're a voice in this. You saw this thing. You cannot be retaliated against for speaking up against bullying. But then also model healthy behavior in the organization. Culture is built through action. So speak up, have courage, be brave, also live with integrity. Don't bully others. Continue to speak up against bullying if you see it. But when you model that behavior, you inspire others to do the same. Now, I also have a message for the leaders specifically. For those of you, if you're a leader, I need you to listen closely because this is about you and for you. You are accountable for the cultures that you create and the behaviors that you tolerate. Leaders must take complaints seriously. You have to take it. If an employee brings to you that they're being bullied, doesn't matter what you think of the person, you have to take that complaint seriously. This has to be investigated quickly. You need to set expectations about what is acceptable behavior in the organization and on the team and what is not. And you have to hold people accountable to those behaviors. Everybody needs to be held accountable. And that could be your peer leader, your leader, everybody must be held accountable. And then because you have power as a leader, you have to prevent retaliation. If an employee brings something to you in good faith that they are being bullied or they witnessed bullying, you cannot retaliate against that person because you set yourself up for legal trouble later. So don't do it. It's also ethically the wrong thing to do. And let me also be clear. Bullying is not like a personality conflict. It is a leadership failure, and it's a very preventable one, okay? Look, bullying doesn't stop on its own. It stops when people stand up and say enough. And you deserve a workplace that builds you, not breaks you. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Valdette Salimai, and you're listening to Built to Grow, the podcast that helps you develop the mindset and tools to become your strongest self. Remember, growth happens by choice, not by accident. I'll see you in the next episode.